came to the door for Jackson. When I went around back, I could hear her screaming when I got here.
The girl?
The girl, yeah, the little girl. She was going nuts, and she's covered in blood. She's got cuts all over her.
Really bad news. Your wife passed away.
What happened? Sit down. Mom, Dad. No.
This is going to be incredibly difficult.
Tuesday, 3rd March, 2020. Detective Kenneth Deese picked up a call on his radio that made his pulse quicken. A welfare check had been requested at a house located in the Black Axis neighborhood of Akron, specifically on Scudder Drive in the 1900 block. The moment Kenneth heard the address, he felt something twist in his gut. That wasn't just any house. That was the home of his best friend, Steve Powell. He wasted no time and dialed Steve's number. Steve answered with a voice that sounded a little too calm. He told Kenneth that his wife Brenda and their daughter Sydney were home. Kenneth knew Steve well enough to sense something hidden beneath those words. He didn't push for more. He just told him to hold tight because the officers were already at the scene. He ended the call, but his mind kept spinning. This wasn't a routine check. Something was waiting behind that front door. And Kenneth Deese wasn't ready for what he was about to find.
She's in the ground. So there's...
Who is it?
My mom! There's... Someone broke in the back window.
All right, hold on.
And she's on the ground. And there's...
Hold on. Where's your mom? Okay, stay right here.
No, there's so much blood. No, please!
Man!
She's in the corner now! No!
Stop! Hold on, we gotta figure out what's going on. 1300. Can you sit down? Can you sit down?
Oh, nice. Get that 32 roll. Get it quick. We got a female down.
Start this morning. Take her outside.
Come on. Come on.
Is she gonna be okay?
Come on.
I want my dad.
Huh?
I want my dad.
What happened? What's going on? What's going on?
We heard a bang. We heard a bang. And she told me to get out. And then I heard screaming. So I came back and she was on the ground.
Okay, you heard a
I ran
bang.
out back. There was a bang. Someone broken.
The officer led Sydney outside while another officer searched the house for signs of whoever had broken in. But the officers hadn't yet called in on the radio that everything was under control or code 4. That alone was enough to keep every police car in the area on high alert. By protocol, any unit nearby would start moving toward the scene the moment officers stepped inside. While all this was happening, Steve Powell was on his way home. He would arrive to find his daughter with a deep wound on her hand and his wife lying inside the house in a terrible state. What he saw in that moment would change everything and leave him asking questions he wasn't ready to face.
Yeah. What's going on? I don't know. We just got
dad. I'm the dad.
Okay,
Sydney. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. What? What the hell? Where's my wife?
The window's broken, Dad.
Where?
The back window's broken in.
So you're gonna have to... The house is inside there, so...
Is she okay?
I don't know. She was
Go check the lady in the house, okay? She's got minor cut. She's got cuts on her hands.
Okay.
So.
She's got cuts on her hand.
Yeah.
Take care of her.
Dave, I think this is, are you dad?
Yeah, I'm the dad.
Can you stay here with them?
The officers asked Steve to wait outside. They wouldn't let him cross the threshold. Inside the house, the officers combed every room searching for the person who had broken in. But what they found inside was anything but ordinary. Brenda, the mother, had suffered multiple wounds that defied the pattern of a simple break-in. It didn't look like the work of a random intruder. Still, they pressed on. They searched the basement and every corner of the house because in that moment, they were certain of one thing. Brenda wasn't going to make it, and the Powell home was about to become something much darker than Steve had ever imagined.
Just put up some crime scene tape. As soon as AFD gets here, they're going to pronounce her, I'm sure. Sam, you want to check her? I don't think it breathes.
You want me to secure it from the outside, or?
Yeah, because the window's in the back here. There's blood all over the back. I came in through the back door. I had to move the couch. I gotta clear the basement. Basement here, buddy.
Akron Police, Sprinter, make yourself known.
The search inside the house turned up no sign of anyone hiding, but it left the officers with a flood of questions. In the kitchen, they found a cast iron skillet stained with blood. Nearby, a large kitchen knife was also marked with blood. But what truly rattled the investigators was the window Sydney claimed had been broken during the break-in. Most of the glass lay scattered outside the house, not inside. Normally, glass would fall indoors if it had been shattered from the outside. That single detail shifted everything. The officers knew they had to take a closer look outside. They moved to the backyard, determined to either prove or dispel their growing suspicions. What they might find out there could change the entire story.
You go to 5.
After thoroughly searching the house, the officers uncovered a trail of questions that didn't align with the story Sydney had told. None of the doors had been forced open or even showed signs of an attempted break-in. The number of wounds her mother had sustained didn't match the pattern of an ordinary home intrusion. And that glass outside the house, it told its own story. If there was an explanation for all these questions, there was only one person who could provide it. Sydney Powell. But there was a problem.
Hey, Sydney. Hello? Sydney? Can you hear me? Sydney. Here we are. Right?
Sydney had fallen into a complete silence after being escorted out of the house. She wouldn't respond to any questions. Yet she was alert and followed instructions without hesitation. What was she holding back, and what truth might break the silence? This question becomes the detective's top priority, and they're going to find the answer. The investigators knew they had to start with the one person who might help them. Steve Powell. They decided to ask him to accompany them to the station while Brenda and Sydney were rushed to the hospital. When Steve entered the interview room, he had no idea about anything except that someone had forced their way into his home and that his wife and daughter had been hurt. Detective Kenneth Dees, Steve's friend, was by his side from the first moment, trying to ease his nerves and answer his questions. But the moment Detective Whitten stepped in, everything shifted. He carried with him the evidence gathered by the officers along with the devastating news from the hospital. Brenda had been pronounced dead as soon as she arrived.
This is the consent to search here. How do you spell your first name?
Steven.
Who'd you get a call from? Or what happened?
Got a call from him. Call from me.
Oh, okay.
He said there was a call, went out, a distress call from the University of Mount Union where my daughter was going, and said, female in distress. I said, well, that's funny because Brenda's there, my wife. So I said, well, let me call. So I called Brenda, and it rings and rings on the cell phone, no answer. I call Sydney back, rings and rings and rings, no answer. I call Brenda back, ring, no answer. I'm pacing around. I call Chief back, and as I'm on the phone with him, telling him there's no answer, my doctor calls me back. I said, oh, Mom's on the phone with Mount Union. I said, well, cops are on the way. And she went, there was a break-in, and she just started going off. She said, well, there's been somebody broke into the house. There's blood everywhere.
What Steve told the investigators was that he had spoken to Sydney and she was acting completely normal. She said her mother had been on the phone with the university. But the moment Sydney heard the police were coming, she spiraled into a panic. She started insisting that someone had broken into the house. That detail confirmed every suspicion the officers had. They now knew no one had entered the house, and they believed Brenda had been killed by her own daughter. But the question still hung heavy in the air. Why would Sydney do something like that?
Is she still attending Mount Union?
Well, as far as we knew up until today, yes. But apparently not for the last I don't know, maybe a couple weeks. Because I tried to get on, I don't know, this was a couple weeks ago, I tried to get on the website I like to check the balance, and she's been coming home on and off on the weekends a little, just odd, little frequently. Never seemed odd for sorts, I mean, it's acted perfectly normal. But she came back and I'm like questioning, well, why aren't you at school? Why are you coming home? And, it's all the same, just, the vague non-answers. And so she turned off her like Life 360 app. But I think on that app, you can't see where she's going. You can kind of see highlights of where the phone was. Well, I'm kind of looking, I'm like, well, you're not where you're supposed to be. This is kind of weird. So I called her on it. And I said, Mom, because I went on, so then I tried to go on the Mount Union website and I figured, I was just see if there's anything on that. Parents only have so much, Right. I'm willing to pay the bill and everything, but if you want to find anything about it, you're out of luck. Right. So, but I figured I'm going to try. So I sign on. It says your password or your login or password ID doesn't work. I'm like, well, that's weird. So I recovered my password and I put in the right answer and it didn't work. And I did that a few times and I texted her back and said, something's not working. What's wrong? She comes up with something that says the website's down, basically. And but I'm working on it. So a few days pass later. Nothing seems out of the ordinary until maybe it was today, I tried to get back. Oh, Mount Union calls me today because I sent them an email that says, my user ID is this, my ID is this, my password's not working, my recovery answer won't work, and I know where I was born, I know my car, and it does when you type in your recovery email, the system just it didn't recognize it. So I sent Mount Union Building an email and says, basically, what's wrong? So she called me back today and says, well, the reason you can't get on, long story short, is your daughter's unenrolled. So I went, what? What's going on? So I text Sydney. I'm like, give me a call. I have a question to ask you. I call her, no answer. I say, give me a call, I have a question to ask you. And I look on that little Life 360 app, and her card was at home. I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. So I leave my phone at home so she can't track me. And I go home, and there she is. She's at home. Perfectly normal. She's crying because I said, what's going on? Are you not going to school? She goes, I'm overwhelmed in school, and I don't really like what I'm doing, and it seems like it's a waste of my time and your money. I said, well, but that's all part of it. Nobody's going to tell you you need to do what you're doing when you're 20. You need to figure it out. But you have to work through the problem. You can't just ignore the problem and have it go away.
I'm sorry, when did you have that conversation with her?
Today, like 11:30. I don't remember. Yeah, it was. I left work because it was before lunch. It was maybe around 11 because I was probably there from 11 to 11:30. So from her phone call. So that's what I said. My recommendation is call the school back, call the student union, get reinstated. And then if you have to take the summer off, take the summer off. Figure out what you want to do. She was going to take summer class because she changed a couple majors. And that's what she goes, all my friends have their shit together and I don't. I said, well, I'm 54 and I don't have my shit together. Don't look at it that way. You need to work the problem. You can't just have the problem sit there and ignoring it is not going to do you any good. So I went back, I called my wife from my daughter's phone. She picks up, she was working down at Children's. And she goes, what's wrong? And I basically told her, I said, Sydney, I think the reason we can't get on is because she's unenrolled. She hasn't been going to school. She goes, well, and then we talked to Jill, her boss, and says, I'll see if I can come home. So I left. On the way home, I either on my way back to work or when I'm at work, I call Brenda and she's like, well, I'm just pulling in now. So I let it go, and then I get a text from Brenda that says, she says something to the effect of she was on the phone waiting for someone from Student Affairs to call me back. And that was at 12:36. She said, how much was the check that they're returning? Because Mount Union told me, too, before, in the phone conversation, we're returning your check. I'm like, nobody would return a check. So I texted her back at 12:36, and I said I had no idea. It was electronic. I said, check on the scholarship too. Make sure she didn't lose that at 12:37. At 12:39, I got on the bank account and I said, maybe. I go, $5,435. And then at 12:41, what did you discuss with her? And that was it.
What Steve shared with the investigators didn't only fill in the blanks about Brenda's final hours, but it did give them the motive they had been searching for. Maybe there had been an argument between mother and daughter about Sydney's academic struggles. There was a real chance she might lose her scholarship. But could a simple argument between a mother and her daughter really lead to something so unthinkable? It was a question that haunted the investigators. Was Sydney in her right mind during that fight with her mother? And more importantly, was she mentally stable? The answer would only be found in one place: Mount Union University. That was where Sydney's friends, teachers, and everyone who had seen her over the last 2 years would have more insight than even her own parents. But before the investigators could begin questioning everyone connected to Sydney, they had one last duty to perform. They had to tell Steve Powell that his wife had died and that the person responsible was his own daughter. Detective Whitten was given the responsibility of breaking that devastating news to Steve. He tried to push that burden onto Kenneth Deese, but he couldn't bring himself to tell his closest friend the truth. The weight of it was too heavy to lay on someone he knew so well.
Well, really bad news. Your wife's passed away. We're not sure. It looks like I don't think someone broke into the house. I don't know if your wife and I got in an argument physically. I mean, the window was broken, but there's no forced entry into the house. The window's broken, but nobody actually came through that window. And the sliding door was unlocked. So, did your wife and daughter ever have like really heated arguments in that?
No. Clearly, they think Sydney did this. Alice, too. She's going to live forever. Wife's dead.
After the news had been delivered to Stephen Powell, and as he himself broke the devastating truth to his son waiting outside, Sydney had received the necessary medical treatment at the hospital. She was then taken back to the police station to be prepared for transfer to Akron General Medical Center. She would be placed under psychological observation for 72 hours. While Sydney was in the hospital, the investigators had already begun their search for answers at Mount Union University. They went to take statements from Michelle Gaffney, the associate dean, who had been the one to alert the police about the incident. In her statement, Michelle recounted how during a call between herself and Brenda Powell, she had been in the office of Dean Fraser, who was speaking with Brenda about Sydney's status at the university. The call started normally. Suddenly, a loud scream shattered the moment, followed by a series of heavy thuds. Dean Fraser and Michelle both tried to call out, but there was no reply. Michelle had dashed from the office and told Tara, the assistant, to get Brenda's address as quickly as possible. At the same time, she tried to contact Akron police directly, instead of dialing 911 because she knew she could reach them faster that way. The call went silent after about 6 or 7 thuds and screams. Then they tried calling twice, but no one picked up. On the third attempt, Sydney answered the phone. "Yes, this is Brenda." Michelle immediately realized the voice wasn't Brenda. She said, "This isn't Brenda, this is Sydney." And then the line went dead again. Michelle didn't hesitate. She called Akron police right away and gave them everything she knew. While the investigators listened to Michelle's statement, their minds were turning over every detail they had gathered about that day and what had come before. The picture now unfolding for them was that Sydney had been hiding her struggles at university, and when her secret was exposed, and her mother reached out to the university, Sydney lashed out in a way no one had expected. She didn't just attack her mother once she struck her over and over. She was aware enough to try to fool the associate dean by pretending to be her mother. And when she learned the police were on their way, she tried to throw them off by claiming someone had broken into the house and smashing the window glass herself. Every piece of evidence pointed in one direction. This wasn't the act of someone who had lost control. It was the act of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. But even so, the investigators knew they had to find any proof or witness that could confirm whether Sydney had any mental health issues that might have influenced her actions. They learned that Sydney had not been on any psychiatric medication on a regular basis. She was known for her sharp mind and outstanding academic record. If there was one person who could confirm or deny any sign of mental instability in Sydney during the past 2 years, it would be one person, her close friend and roommate at the university. Lauren Curry.
Lauren, first of all, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
We know that this whole thing's difficult for you, and you're trying to make sense of it, and so are we.
In that interview, the investigators had 3 questions burning in their minds. If Lauren Curry could answer them, the entire case would be crystal clear. Had there been any signs that Sydney was going through a psychological crisis? What was her relationship with her mother really like? Had Sydney been using any substances on a regular basis? The answers to those questions might hold the key to understanding why that day had ended the way it did, and whether the girl they were dealing with was simply troubled, or something much more complicated.
So she just wasn't, did it seem like, how did this like kind of change affect her? I mean, did it affect her moods at all? Did she seem concerned about it? Or tell us about that.
I think she kept a lot of stuff hidden because when we were just talking or with our friends, she always seemed happy. Like, she seemed okay, like I said, I couldn't tell until the end where she was kind of just like struggling and she kind of was sad and just like, Lauren, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, you just need to find what makes you happy and like, just, you need to find what you like to do. And I don't know, I think it did make her a little upset because she was confused, because I think she felt like everybody around her kind of had figured out what they wanted to do and she hadn't, so I think that kind of affected her.
So when do you think that it really started affecting her, that like, look, this is, I'm really having problems and this is, I have to, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Tell us when you think that it really started affecting her, like, often.
Like her anxiety? Well, I know she's had anxiety for a while, but I think it was this last semester, like starting coming back in January, is when it really started, like she was kind of more like upset because she really didn't know what she wanted to do, like she didn't like her classes.
Let's talk about this. You're her best friend, and I know this is difficult, but tell us about her relationship with her parents.
Her and her parents had a really good relationship. Like, her mom and her were best friends. Probably, like, they did everything together. Like, one of the reasons she went home was to be with her mom. They were always close. She never said anything bad about her mom. She never ever talked about having an argument with her mom. Like, I can't recall every time she'd be going home, she's like, I can't wait to see my mom. Or when she goes home for weekends, she'd be like, oh, my mom wants me to come home so we can hang out and like watch movies. And she loved being home. And she had a good relationship with her dad too. Like, I know that her and her dad liked to watch like Star Wars together, and he always like cooked food at the house. Like, he liked cooking, and she'd always talk about how good his food was and what they would get each other for Christmas and things about spring break. Like, she loved being home, like, with her family.
When she's, once she got to Mount Union, or anytime actually, did Sydney ever drink alcohol at all, or she did? Mm-hmm. Okay, just kind of describe that for us. I mean, we've all been college age, so, and...
No. I don't usually, like, drink a lot, and if I do, it's one, but she liked to drink. There was an incident in the fall of our freshman year where she drank too much, and she wasn't alcohol poisoned, but she did end up in the hospital. And her mom came and got her at like 2 in the morning, but she did end up in the hospital that day because she drank like mixed drinks and drank too much. But usually after that, her and I were together, and if she did drink, I usually kind of like slowed her down after I knew kind of her limit because she's small, so kind of knew her limit. But she did drink.
What situation was that in? Was that like just like a party or something, or?
I was in the dorm room watching movies because I didn't want to go out. So she went out with some other her friends. I wasn't really close with them. I was close with one of them, but not the rest. And I got a call around like 11 saying Sydney was at a party and she was throwing up and she just wasn't good and to come pick her up.
The investigators emerged from the interview with a clearer picture. Sydney had been dealing with significant anxiety and some emotional challenges linked to her struggles at university. But she wasn't detached from reality. There were no obvious signs of psychological issues that could explain what happened. On top of that, she had a very close relationship with her mother. Her life at university wasn't much different from any other girl her age. That left the investigators with only one path to follow.
Murder trial underway for a daughter charged with killing her own mother.
Investigators say that Sydney Powell stabbed her mother multiple times inside their Akron home. She's pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and today we heard from witnesses.
And 19 News, the only local camera inside the courtroom. Everywhere at 5, see a New Yorker has more from the Summit County Courthouse.
You attended the autopsy?
Yes. Prosecutors say it was a gruesome crime.
We know that Brenda was stabbed about 30 times. Yes. And Sydney has blood on her knee, correct? Yes. Does it make sense that maybe Sydney was kneeling down and stabbing Brenda?
I'd say it's possible.
And all the stab wounds of Brenda were from the neck up?
Majority of them, yes. 23-year-old Sydney Powell is charged with murdering her mother, 50-year-old Brenda Powell. Sydney chose not to listen to some of the witnesses as they described the crime scene and left the courtroom for some of the testimony. Investigators say back in March of 2020, the then 19-year-old woman stabbed her mother, Brenda, inside their Akron home after their argument turned physical. An Akron detective described what a witness told him in a 911 call.
They were on the phone, and there was a lot of screaming going on, so he couldn't really say if it was like a physical fight, but just heard like a lot of yelling and screaming going on. And then he tried calling back twice, and there was no call back.
When officers arrived, they found Brenda suffering from stab wounds. She died at the hospital. Sydney was also taken to the hospital with minor injuries, but was arrested and released on bond. Monday in court, jurors viewed some of the more than 10,000 pages of text messages between Sydney and her friends leading up to the crime. They also viewed police body cams showing the aftermath, Sydney with bloody wounds and blood at the home. Per Judge Kelly McLaughlin, media is not allowed to film any of that evidence with our cameras.
On 28 September 2023, the court delivered its sentence. Sydney Powell was sentenced to life behind bars with a minimum of 15 years before she could even be considered for parole. That single decision sealed her fate. But as the courtroom emptied, one question still echoed in the minds of those who had followed the case. Why did she do it? And what would the future hold for a girl whose life had taken such a dark turn? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. See you in the next video.